Now let's learn about fighting and aggression. Fighting is one expression of aggressive mood. It is definitely the most potential and dangerous expression. Fighting is highly variable in the animal kingdom. Some do not fight, but others may fight to death. The fighting is a behavioral result of competitive interaction with winning has the same advantage of as successful competition. Fighting may actually function in reducing aggressive interactions, and its usefulness lies in its role as a mechanism for establishing a hierarchy and thus avoiding future conflict. Introduction of a strange animal into the hierarchy results into fights, or the same may happen when an animal attempts to change rank, superiors being challenged by youngsters. Fighting also plays an important role in establishing the territories, and once the territories are established, the fighting is greatly reduced. It is quite obvious that fighting is generally avoided because of the dangers like injury, death, etc. are involved. Injured animals are weaker and might also suffer higher predation, or altered or interrupted feeding patterns may arise, putting the animal in competitive disadvantageous conditions. It is quite obvious that fighting is generally avoided because of the dangers of injury, death, etc. involved. Injured animals are weaker and might also suffer higher predation or altered or interrupted feeding patterns may arise, putting the animal in competitive disadvantageous condition. As also stated in the beginning, the fighting is usually a result of competition between members of the same species. When fighting occurs between members of the same species, there are distinct advantages to keeping physical harm to a minimum. In most species, fighting barely leads to real injury, but when it occurs, it is usually between members of a relatively harmless species. The dangerous species are those which can run fast and get away from each other and have some system of inhibiting aggression. As also stated in the beginning, fighting is usually a result of competition between members of the same species. When fighting occurs between members of the same species, there are distinct advantages to keeping physical harm to a minimum. In most species, fighting rarely leads to real injury, but when it occurs, it is usually between members of a relatively harmless species. The dangerous species are those which can run fast and get away from each other and have some system of inhibiting aggression. Among this, when one have some system of inhibiting aggression, among this, when one have some system of realizes its defeat, it stops attacking by showing submission. It has already been dealt that fighting may be rendered less dangerous by using appeasement postures, threat postures, greeting ceremonies, etc. These fights are often called the tournament fights. These fights are quite important among dangerous animals. Male rattlesnakes can kill each other with their poison, but they never bite. Instead, they raise their heads and try to push each other to the ground. When one is defeated, it is allowed to retreat. Similarly, males of marine iguanas of Galapagos Island defend these territories by head to head pushing contests. When one drops to the ground, the fight is over. Fighting male rattlesnakes, each male tries to push the other to the ground but do not bite each other because they are poisonous, very dangerous. Fighting male marine iguana of the Galapagos Island, males defend the territory but indulging into fight with intruding male, pushing head on against each other. The one which does not feel winning drops down flat to its belly. In some cases, there are special morphological adaptations for tournament fighting in the form of claws, In some cases, there are special morphological adaptations for tournament fighting in the form of claws, keeled legs in case of crabs, horns and antlers, giraffes, antelopes, cattle, etc. Horns Horned mammals have provided information as to how damage may be avoided in fights. The horn size gives direct information regarding fighting ability, and the fight may therefore be avoided as the smaller horned individual avoid fight. When interspecific fighting occurs, the horns are rarely used to inflict injury. In case of oryx, uses the weapons or horns in a ritualized manner. The animal locking antlers or horns and pushing head to head in a trial of strength. It is against the rules to stride the rival into one side, which could inflict fatal wounds. In all cases, attacks are made possible towards protected parts of the rival's body. This some Oryx, on the other hand, would play havoc on an attack with lion, who will be inflicted on the flanks. The northern elephant seals rear up, standing on hind legs, and make a cut or slashing at an opponent's throat and chest with their elongated canines, but the throat and chest area is well protected by a thick layer of blubber and an armor like skin. The hornless female antelope shows no hesitation in biting each other in the flank. Of course, such attacks are harmless. Perhaps horns were developed for intraspecific fighting rather than for predator defense. Secondly, the weapons on the head develops as a means of sexual selection. The exaggerated horns can release mating behavior in females. In general, we may say that in those species where fighting is highly stylized, lethal weapons are present. Fighting hornless female antelopes by belting on the opposite's flanks. Physiology of aggression, conflict, or fighting. The next topic is the physiology of aggression, conflict, or fighting. After touching various interrelated aspects like aggression, conflict, and fighting, it is easy to conclude that an aggressive individual not only shows external changes in posture, activity, etc., but also that the internal physiological conditions have changed. Therefore, it is necessary to discuss the possible physiological mechanisms including aggression and related phenomena. And the hormonal control is usually represented here. It has been observed that aggressive behavior is correlated with changes in blood chemistry of the various chemical substances produced in the body. The hormones are the chief chemicals, and among the hormones, the adrenaline or the epinephrine from adrenal endocrine glands close to the kidneys and sex hormones from the gonads influence the aggressive behavior in animals. So, what is the effect of adrenaline? The adrenal glands have an internal medulla supplied by automatic autonomic nerve systems. Adrenal glands have an internal medulla region which is supplied by autonomic nerve systems and an external cortex region and an internal medulla and an external cortex. Under the moderate stress, activity of autonomic nerve system is increased, thereby stimulating adrenal medulla, thus releasing the hormone adrenaline into the bloodstream. This causes numerous changes, including profuse secretion from sweat glands, erection of hair, increased heart rate, rapid and deeper breathing, and diversion of blood to the muscles. This change is accompanied with strong arousal of tendencies such as attack, escape, and mating, and they prepare the body for violent action of any type. In persistent conflict situations, further reaction involves the adrenal cortex too, which is indirectly stimulated not by nerves but by another hormone, ACTH, or the adrenocorticotropic hormone, and produced by the pituitary gland. Continued stress activates cells in the hypothalamus, which then stimulates the pituitary to release ACTH, adrenocorticotropic hormone. Under the influence of ACTH, three broad classes of hormones are produced from the adrenal cortex. They are the mineralocorticoids, which are the aldosterone, corticosterone, and deoxycorticosterone. These are the mineralocorticoids regulating mineral metabolism. These are the mineralocorticoids. Then ACTH hormones are produced from the adrenal cortex. They are the glucocorticoids, cortisone, hydrocortisone, deoxycortisone, regulating carbohydrate, fat, and protein metabolism. The aforementioned mineralocorticoids are regulating mineral metabolism, and glucocorticoids are functional in regulating carbohydrate, fat, and protein metabolism. Sex hormones are also produced, like androgens, estrogens, and progesterone, acting on the sex organs with little or no function in an adult. Although it is not yet fully clear how the adrenal cortex hormones help an animal to adapt to stress, but through glucocorticoids, by way of affecting carbohydrate metabolism, help in adequate nutrition of muscles which are excessively used during flight or fight reactions. When an animal faces an adverse situation, it is in danger for its life. It can react to this emergency either by running away or escape, flight reaction to safety, or by giving a tough fight to the enemy, fight reaction. The fight and flight reactions are governed by both hormones from adrenal cortex and medulla, the latter being the main controlling factor. Both of the reactions require better and precise use of eyes, dilation of pupil to see wider field or escape or to become alert. Efficient circulation to muscles and brain, decreased circulation to skin and gut to lose less blood in eventuality of injury, efficient use of muscles and nerves, sufficient amount of glucose in circulating blood, etc. Though it is not fully clear how the adrenal cortex hormones help an animal to adapt to stress, but through glucocorticoids, by way of affecting carbohydrate metabolism, help in adequate nutrition of muscles which are extensively used during flight or fight reaction. When an animal faces an adverse situation, it is a danger for its life. It can react to this emergency either by running away or escape to safety, or by giving a tough fight to the enemy. Fight reaction. The fight and flight reactions are governed by both hormones from adrenal cortex and medulla, the latter being the main controlling factor. Both of the reactions require better and precise use of eyes, dilation of pupil to see wider field for escape or to become alert, efficient circulation to muscles and brain, decreased circulation to skin and gut, decreased circulation to skin and gut to lose less blood in eventuality of injury, efficient use of muscles and nerves, sufficient amount of glucose in control circulating blood, etc. Sequence of events in the body reactions to stress situations such as danger, flight, or fight can be given as under activation of the adrenal medulla precedes that of the adrenal cortex. Stress situation happens, receptors aroused, which are of central cortex, then the hypothalamus leads to via medullary and spinal cord to sympathetic system, brain, skin, muscle action, lung, heart, gut, rapid mobilization of body resources to meet stress. Adrenal medulla stimulates the adrenaline, supports action of the sympathetic system, which leads to brain, skin, muscle action, lung, heart, gut, rapid mobilization of body resources to meet stress. Stress situation, hypothalamus, adrenal medulla. Hypothalamus stimulates pituitary, releases ACTH from adrenal cortex. Two types of hormones are released. They are the mineralocorticoids and glucocorticoids. They lead to conservation activities, which give added ability to withstand stress. Okay, now beside the above, it has been found that lower ranking mammals can be distinguished from dominant ones by the WBC counts, fat deposits around the adrenal glands, blood cholesterol levels, secretion of hypocortisone, ascorbic acid levels in the adrenals, and overall adrenal weight. Effect of sex hormones. What is the effect of sex hormones? It is now an established fact that the male hormones produced by testes are strongly responsible for aggressiveness. That is strongly responsible for aggressiveness. Although there are a number of different male and female hormones, and one most important to aggression is testosterone. It is produced in the gonad and initiates physical chances of puberty as its levels in the blood rises. The rats do not fight much until puberty when the aggressiveness develops dramatically. If young rats are injected with testosterone, they will begin fighting earlier. If testosterone is injected into hens or castrated chickens, they will develop comb and plumage of a cock, and their aggressive behavior will intensify. Hens injected with testosterone become more aggressive and dominant and fight their way up in the rank order. Cocks or roosters that are either castrated, testes removed, or injected with female hormone become more timid and their rank drops. Testosterone also has an effect on territorial behavior, as we have seen that the castration lowers aggressiveness in males, but the removal of ovaries has no effect on female aggressiveness. In female hamsters, it is observed that if estrogen is administered, they may grow more aggressive, but higher levels of progesterone have no effect. If both estrogen and progesterone are administered, they may become less aggressive. Now let's learn about the nerves control. Nerves control. Discussions have been regarding the relation of limbic system with different kinds of behavior, including the aggressive ones are also already made. As stated earlier, the limbic system is composed of a series of structures in the upper brain and lower cerebrum and is intimately involved in motivation. The limbic system includes the thalamus, bridal chamber, and the epithalamus, roof of the thalamus, hypothalamus, floor of the chamber, hippocampus, amygdala. Amygdala, in the sense, it's almond shaped. Because of its almond shape, that part of a brain is called amygdala. Cingulum or cingulate gyrus belt and a septum or fence. The limbic system has long been considered to influence the aggressive behavior. If amygdala or hippocampus were removed or cut, a monkey become unusually placid or tame. On the other hand, in some cats, when amygdala was cut, they showed increased irritability and anger. Wild cats were tamed by cutting amygdala, and wild Norway rats with the same lesion lost all aggressiveness. When this, it does not mean that amygdala has opposing functions, but it is, or may be, due to the presence of a large number of nuclei in it, which have opposing functions. Another way, it may be said that there are certain brain centers that are intimately associated with aggression, but they cannot be pinpointed in all cases. They cannot be pinpointed in all cases. In GIST, both the cerebral cortex and the hypothalamus are concerned with the expression of anger. Cortical, cerebral cortex, and the hypothalamus are associated with the expression of anger. Removal of cerebral cortex pieces by piece shows that part of it represses anger so that slight stimulation does not upset an animal in ordinary life. Another part actually excites anger. Hypothalamus itself is a brain center which manifests the effects of primary external stimuli which produce fighting behavior. This action is normally checked and directed by the cerebral cortex. Now let's learn about the quit biting. To have the knowledge of the involvement of parts of brain in the physiological relationship of aggression, electrode implant experiments were conducted and these have drastically altered the behavior of animals. Electrodes were implanted in the lateral hypothalamus. Electrodes were implanted in the lateral hypothalamus of cats living with rats. Few millionth of a volt of electricity was flowed, and the cat still ignored the rats and moved around the cage, but at a slightly higher stimulus, the cat would leap on the rat, biting it behind the neck. Such attacks are unemotional, lacking any sign of aggression, and is called the quiet biting. If the more medial hypothalamus is stimulated, the cat will become so aggressive that it will lash out everything. The pupils dilate, back arches, hair stand, and the claws are extended. It growls, hisses, and urinates. In rats, when posterior hypothalamus is stimulated, natural mouse killers will kill faster, but to make more kills to quiet bite, the anterior and medial hypothalamus must be stimulated. Thus, the centers for the behavior are different in rats and cats, and no single seat of aggression can be identified in the brain. The mammalian brain appears to possess the organization that gives every individual a potential for attack. Destructive attacks and killing can be elicited from widely separated parts of the mammalian brain other than just hypothalamus. Amygdala may be more important in the normal performance of aggression. Now let's have a summary of all this conflict and aggressive behavior. There are some behavioral patterns which an animal displays for acquiring food, water, oxygen, energy, homeostasis, reproduction, social status, and harmony within its environment. So, unlike the stereotyped behaviors, these behavior patterns are characteristic of the individual. Some of them, which are most common to an individual in its life cycle, are listed as follows, which are the exploration behavior, conflict behavior, aggression, fear and communications, avoidance behavior, play, locomotion, feeding and drinking behavior, sleep behavior, social behavior, and the biological rhythms. Of this, only conflict and aggression will be considered in this chapter. Some others, such as communication, social behavior, and biological rhythms, have been dealt separately elsewhere. Drickmet et al. In 2002 have considered conflict and aggression as same type of behavior. However, they have differentiated between aggression and agonistic behavior. Aggression and agonistic behavior are different, but they have considered conflict and aggression as the same type of behavior. Okay, so first let's start by learning about the conflict. Conflict refers to the conflict between behavioral tendencies within an animal. Conflict is the conflict between behavioral tendencies within an animal. There are two ways in which we come across a conflicted situation, condition when two tendencies which are mutually incompatible arouse together and compete one another for dominance in a regulation of a behavior. For example, a hungry animal wants to approach a food source but avoids to do so because of some fear. This animal is in a conflict between approach and avoidance of food. Two systems are happening, like the approach and avoidance of food. The animal is hungry but it can't, access the food because of some fear. So in other condition, only one tendency is aroused. In other condition, only one tendency is aroused. In one condition, only one tendency is aroused in animal to achieve a goal, but the goal itself remain inaccessible. The second condition explains only one tendency is aroused in animal to achieve a goal, but the goal itself remain inaccessible, and animal thus be thwarted. For example, a hungry animal wants to reach a food source but finds inaccessible as its runway is blocked by a glass plate. As we have mentioned earlier, the first situation, an animal is approaching a food source but due to fear, but it's hungry, but it can't, access that food because of fear. So there occurs a conflict of hunger and fear. But in the second case, the animal tries to approach the food source, but it's that food source is inaccessible, like the runway is blocked by a glass plate. So that is the second situation. In both the situations, there is happening a conflict behavior, conflict between behavioral tendencies within an animal, conflict between behavioral tendencies within an animal. Okay. Conflicting situations. Let's learn about the different conflicting situations. In animals, following three situations of conflict arise. First one is the avoidance behavior. Avoidance behavior. Avoidance conflict. Avoidance conflict. It occurs when two behavior tendencies for avoidance are aroused simultaneously. It is unstable and movement of the individual to either direction from equilibrium point will increase avoidance to the object coming close to the animal. അവോയ്ഡൻസ് ബിഹേവിയറിൻ്റെ കാര്യമാണ് ഇവിടെ പറയുന്നത്. അവോയ്ഡൻസ് കോൺഫ്ലിക്റ്റിൽ it occurs when two behavioral tendencies for avoidance are aroused simultaneously. It is unstable, and movement of the individual to either direction from equilibrium point will increase avoidance to the object coming close to the animal. Next one is the approach conflict. First one was the avoidance conflict. Now the second one is the approach conflict. It occurs when two behavioral tendencies aroused simultaneously are directed towards the different goals. Two behavioral tendencies aroused simultaneously are directed towards the different goals. It is transitory and unstable. A slight shift to either direction from equilibrium point will enhance approach in opposite direction. Now, approach avoidance conflict. It occurs when two behavioral tendencies aroused together to approach and to avoid the same object. It is stable as animal always moves towards the equilibrium point. Here we can see distance from goal and tendency to approach or avoid. Equilibrium point is there. Avoidance gradient increasing, then the approach gradient is also increasing. Approach avoidance conflict. It occurs when two behavioral tendencies aroused together in approach and to avoid the same object. It is stable as animal always moves toward the equilibrium point.